You snap at someone you love over something trivial. An hour later, the shame arrives, but so does a worse question. If that reaction came out of nowhere, what else is living in you that you've never met? Most people think they're afraid of becoming bad. They're not. They're afraid of discovering they already have darkness inside them. And the more they deny it, the more it runs their life from behind the curtain. Carl Jung believed this hidden part of you has a name, the shadow. Ignore it, and it sabotages your relationships, your self-improvement, even your moral identity. Learn to integrate it, and it becomes strength. But first, let me tell you why this matters more today than ever. A century ago, in a Europe cracking under war, ideology, and spiritual collapse, a psychiatrist sat with a disturbing idea. Civilization wasn't just breaking politically, it was breaking psychologically. The monsters people feared in the world were reflections of what they refused to see in themselves. Carl Jung wasn't interested in polishing people into perfect citizens. He was interested in wholeness, and that's a far more dangerous goal, because perfection is flattering, wholeness is humiliating. Wholeness demands that you confront not just your virtues, but your envy, vanity, cruelty, resentment, lust for control, everything your public image tries to hide. This is where Jung intersects with modern philosophy in a way that feels almost uncomfortably current. We live in an age obsessed with image management. Algorithms reward performance. Culture teaches branding before character, so people become experts at signaling goodness while remaining strangers to themselves. And here's the uncomfortable part. The nicer your mask, the darker your unexamined shadow can become. Because what you banish doesn't disappear, it descends, it waits. It leaks out in sarcasm, addictions, passive aggression, moral superiority, and those moments when you say, "That's just not me," right after doing exactly that. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That sentence is a direct challenge to almost everything modern people believe about freedom. You think you're choosing? Jung asks, are you choosing? Or are you being driven? You think your anger is justified, your jealousy is rational, your self-sabotage is unfortunate timing. But what if these patterns are not random? What if they are the language of a self you've exiled? This is not just psychology. It's philosophy, deep philosophy, about human nature, agency, and moral responsibility. Ancient wisdom asked how to master the self. Stoic philosophy taught discipline over impulse. Modern Stoicism asks what we can control. Jung adds a brutal layer. How can you master impulses you refuse to admit are yours? Because the first step in shadow work is not becoming better, it's becoming honest. And what Jung says next is where the real descent begins. Step 1, notice your projections. The shadow rarely introduces itself directly. It wears disguises. Most often, it appears as intense judgment. The person you instantly despise, obsess over, envy, or morally condemn may be carrying traits that belong not only to them, but to you. Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That doesn't mean everyone who harms you is your teacher. Let's be precise. Sometimes people are manipulative. Sometimes they're cruel. Shadow work is not naive forgiveness. It's asking a more difficult question. Why did this specific trait ignite me so intensely? Why this person? Why this reaction? Maybe you hate arrogance because your own hunger for recognition has been buried under politeness. Maybe you despise controlling people because you secretly fantasize about dominating your environment. Maybe you condemn attention seekers because part of you is starving to be seen. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think projection only applies to negative traits. It doesn't. You can project your greatness too. You may admire someone's courage, creativity, sensuality, or power because you've disowned those capacities in yourself. The shadow contains not just what is shameful, but what is unlived. That's the counterintuitive part. The dark side isn't only darkness. It's everything your conscious identity refuses to carry. So if you've built your identity around being agreeable, your assertiveness goes underground. If you pride yourself on being rational, your emotional intensity goes underground. If you're the strong one, your vulnerability goes underground. This is why modern self-improvement often stalls. People try to optimize habits without investigating the hidden forces sabotaging them. They meditate, journal, read philosophy, maybe even practice modern stoicism, but still explode in private, still choose the wrong partner, still repeat the same humiliating life lessons. Why? Because techniques can refine the mask while leaving the shadow untouched. And here's something even more shocking. The people most obsessed with appearing virtuous are often the most dangerous when they split off their shadow. History is full of polite monsters. That statement will bother some people. Good, it should. Because evil rarely arrives announcing itself as evil. It usually arrives convinced of its own righteousness. If you never question your capacity for pettiness, domination, or self-deception, then you are not safer. You are simply less aware. So step 1 is brutally simple. When your emotional reaction feels oversized, investigate it. Don't justify it immediately. Don't spiritualize it. Don't post about it. Ask, what in me is being exposed? Step 2, stop moralizing your inner world. Most people encounter the shadow and instantly divide themselves into hero and villain. They say, I shouldn't feel this. I'm better than this. This isn't who I am. But that reaction is exactly what keeps the shadow alive. Shame drives it deeper. Condemnation gives it secrecy. Jung's most famous line on this is devastatingly clear. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is where shadow work separates itself from performance morality. Real growth is not pretending to be pure. It's developing the courage to say, yes, I can be petty. Yes, I can crave power. Yes, I have fantasized about revenge. Yes, I want admiration. Yes, there are parts of me capable of real harm under the right conditions. That's not self-hatred, that's self-knowledge. And if that sounds harsh, consider the alternative. The person who admits their aggression can channel it into protection, discipline, boundaries, and truth-telling. The person who denies their aggression often leaks it through manipulation, gossip, cruelty, disguised as honesty or moral posturing. Which person is actually more ethical? Here's the controversial claim. Trying to be a good person too early can make you psychologically weaker. Because if your goodness depends on never facing your capacity for darkness, then it's not virtue, it's innocence. And innocence breaks the moment life stops being gentle. Ancient wisdom understood this better than we often do. Stoic philosophy never assumed human beings were naturally noble in every moment. It trained people to examine impressions, regulate impulses, and prepare for adversity. But Jung goes further inward. He says discipline without confrontation can become repression. You can control your behavior and still be possessed by what you refuse to know. So step 2 is to name what exists without collapsing into guilt. You say, this is in me, not this defines me. There's a difference. If you feel envy, say envy. If you feel superiority, say superiority. If you want control, say control. Precision matters. The shadow feeds on vagueness. This is where it gets interesting, because the moment you stop treating these impulses as proof that you're broken, they become usable information. Your jealousy may reveal neglected ambition. Your resentment may reveal violated boundaries. Your fantasies of domination may reveal deep helplessness. Your need to impress may reveal an unloved child still begging for worth. So don't ask only, how do I get rid of this? Ask, what is this trying to tell me? Isn't that what philosophy at its best has always done? Turn symptom into inquiry. Step 1 was seeing the shadow in projection. Step 2 is refusing to turn that discovery into another performance. But there's a third step, and this is where shadow work stops being theory and starts becoming power. Step 3, dialogue with the shadow. Step 4, give it a conscious role. This is the part people skip because it sounds strange, but it may be the most important. Once you've identified a shadow trait and named it honestly, you don't just suppress it. You ask what function it serves. Every recurring impulse, even the ugly ones, usually began as an attempt to protect you, compensate for you, or complete you. Maybe your need to control came from childhood chaos. Maybe your coldness was armor. Maybe your arrogance was protection against humiliation. Maybe your people-pleasing concealed rage because anger once felt unsafe. The shadow often contains rejected survival strategies that outlived their usefulness. So Jungian integration asked you to do something radical. Speak to these parts of yourself as if they have intelligence, not ultimate authority. Intelligence. Ask, what are you trying to do for me? When do you appear? What do you fear would happen if you disappeared? This is not mysticism in the vague sense. It's disciplined introspection. It's modern philosophy meeting inner practice. It's the recognition that human beings are not simple. You are not one clean voice. You are a crowded interior, and maturity is not silencing that crowd by force. It is establishing wise leadership. Then comes step 4, give the shadow a job, because integration is not acceptance without structure. It is conscious employment. If you discover aggression in yourself, maybe its job is defending your time, your body, your principles. If you discover narcissistic hunger, maybe its job is teaching you where you need rightful recognition instead of false humility. If you discover envy, maybe its job is pointing to unlived potential. This is where Stoic philosophy and Jung unexpectedly shake hands. The Stoics wanted inner governance. Jung wanted psychological wholeness. Together, they suggest a profound principle. You do not become wise by amputating parts of yourself. You become wise by ordering them. And that's the aha moment. The shadow is not your enemy. The unconscious relationship to it is. What destroys people is not anger, desire, ambition, or pride by themselves. It is blindness, blind anger, blind desire, blind ambition, blind pride. Jung also wrote, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Why include that here? Because shadow work doesn't just change your private mind. It changes every relationship you have. When you know your own need for control, you stop accusing your partner of always being difficult every time they ask for space. When you know your own vanity, you become less hypnotized by status. When you know your own capacity for deception, you become humbler, sharper, less easily manipulated. Imagine what that means in a culture built on projection. Online outrage, tribal politics, workplace drama, broken intimacy. How much of it is people fighting over traits they cannot bear in themselves? How much suffering comes from unlived, unowned, unintegrated inner life? So let me ask you something. If your hidden traits are already influencing your choices, your relationships, and your destiny, what exactly are you protecting by refusing to look? This is why Jung still matters, not as a trend, not as aesthetic psychology, but as a serious answer to one of the oldest problems in philosophy. How can a human being become whole without lying about what they are? Go back to that opening moment, the sharp word, the overreaction, the flash of jealousy, control, resentment, or silent contempt. Most people rush to explain it away. Stress, bad timing, their fault, your childhood, Mercury retrograde. Anything but the truth that a hidden part of them just reached for the wheel. But now you have a different path. The next 7 days, when something or someone triggers a disproportionate reaction in you, don't defend yourself immediately. Write down 3 things: what happened, what you felt, what that feeling might reveal about your shadow. Then ask one final question: how can this trait be integrated rather than denied? If it's anger, where do you need a boundary? If it's envy, what desire have you abandoned? If it's superiority, what insecurity is it protecting? If it's neediness, what wound is still asking to be seen? This is not about becoming darker, it's about becoming less divided. And paradoxically, that may be the foundation of genuine wisdom. Not innocence, not image, not performative goodness. Wisdom, the kind ancient wisdom pursued, the kind modern Stoicism often gestures toward. The kind real self-improvement demands when life stops being theoretical. Some people will hear all this and still choose comfort. They will keep identifying with the mask. They will keep calling fate what is really pattern. They will keep being shocked by their own behavior because surprise is easier than responsibility. Don't be one of them. Try this for 7 days. Come back and tell me what changed. Because the part of you that you refuse to meet will keep introducing itself to everyone else.